Content warning. Episodes of Gray Matter may contain themes and depictions of extreme mental illness, traumatic bodily harm, and death. If you aren't in the right headspace to engage with those depictions right now, maybe this episode should wait for another time. Otherwise, proceed with caution.
Welcome back to Gray Matter Video. Sorry to not be out there to greet you, but I had some bad sushi for lunch and I think it's trying to fight its way out. Oh, it's you. I picked the tape out for you already. I figured you might be in today. Sitting there on the counter if you just want to take it. We have your credit card on file. It's called... Oop, hold on.
It's called Colony, and it's a story about a man who, like me, quite literally hates his own guts. Probably shouldn't watch it if you have a weak stomach. This one could get pretty upsetting. Better not let any little kidneys watch it either. Let me explain. You know what? Just forget about the puns. The point is, it's going to be gross. Speaking of, you should probably get out of here before I start coughing up more shrimp tempura. Good luck.
Colony. Written and directed by Jonathan Inbody.
I am, and have always been, a man apart. While other kids were learning to share their toys, I was stealing mine. As I grew from a promising young delinquent to a 20-something with an ever-expanding rap sheet, it became increasingly clear that I was emerging into a narrow field, namely, being one of a rare few criminals blessed with at least half a brain. I had been taken under the wing of a veteran B&E man, with whom I had once had the honor of sharing a holding cell. He taught me the tricks of the trade, and I followed them like my own personal 10 commandments. Thou shalt not carry a piece. That was a big one. Having a gun elevated a breaking and entering to an armed robbery, almost doubling the potential jail time. Thou shalt have a lockpick, and if one is unavailable, then a nail file. That commandment had served me well. By the time I was 25, there wasn't an analog lock on earth I couldn't pick. But, as any compulsive masturbator will tell you, having the ability to do something and having the sober judgment to know when to do it are very different things. And, like every social outcast with poor impulse control, that was what got me into my current brand of trouble. I had been hired to steal industrial-strength painkillers straight from the source, a pharmaceutical production facility for a company called Chemway. That part wasn't hard. I nicked an access card from a drunk old custodian I met at the bar across the street, then sidled in through a carefully cut hole in the security fence and found my way to the production floor. I found where the workers picked up their disposable PPE and slipped on a mask and gloves, then intercepted a box on its way between the production line and the truck. On my way out, strolling fearlessly down the hallway with the knowledge that they'd never be able to recognize me on their security footage, I passed by a door that caught my attention. Special access area. Do not enter. That was what it said, and as any self-respecting ruffian will tell you, that's where they keep the good stuff. Maybe there wouldn't be anything to steal, but the simple existence of a locked door and a keep out sign was enough to make me want to check it out. I swiped the custodian's access card and tugged on the door handle. Denied. Maybe there was something valuable in there. I slipped my hand into my pocket and took out my nail file, then popped off the front plate of the small access box and got to work. With a few disconnected wires and one removed screw, the lock popped open. I stepped past the special access door and closed it behind me, then turned to look at the small room I found myself in. The walls were opaque glass, thin enough that my silhouette could be seen from outside, but thick enough to hide most of my features. Along one wall was a row of see-through canisters, each filled with different liquids and pill-shaped solids. In front of them sat a pair of microscopes, as well as a few pairs of safety glasses and a half-empty box of gloves. Oh well, it had been worth a shot. I turned back to the door, stepping out as I took one last look around the room behind me. I barely noticed, but sitting on the far end of the counter was a small pile of broken glass. I grabbed a late dinner at a 24-hour diner, then headed over to Doc's to drop off the box of stolen goods. He was a fairly withdrawn man, friendly but not quite personable, and I never did get the story of exactly how he lost his medical license. He worked now as an underworld doctor, fixing up crooks like me for pennies on the dollar. I parked on the street and walked around to the back of his house, where his attached garage had been outfitted to be a makeshift surgical office. I knocked on the metal door and waited.
Who is it?
Medical delivery. Come on, it's cold out here.
Oh, it is you. Come in, Matthew. Come in.
I stepped into his garage, glancing around at the rusty tables and chairs he had sitting next to an old metal desk. Behind them, sitting in the middle of the room, was an old gurney. 4 limb restraints hung from its sides, swinging almost imperceptibly in the soft night breeze flowing in from outside. Where do you want me to put your stuff?
The desk is fine.
Hey, do you have any Pepto or anything? My stomach's kind of bothering me.
Are you sick?
Not that I know of. I did just eat diner food, though, so...
If you put garbage in, you'll get garbage out.
Yeah, that's what my mom always says, but I just... Oh, Jesus.
Are you all right?
I'll be fine. I gotta get... Fuck. God, that hurts.
Here, let me help you over to a chair. You know what? Let's go to the gurney. I want to take a look at you.
I'm fine.
You're not. You're about to collapse. Here, just sit still. Let me take a look.
I laid back on that gurney, grabbing the metal railings on each side as I winced from sudden pain. Doc lifted the bottom of my shirt, then quickly dropped it and looked up at me, pale-faced. What's wrong?
Nothing. But don't move. You could hurt yourself. I'm gonna go put some gloves on.
Doc, what's happening? What did you see? I looked down at my shirt. A small bulge rose up from my stomach, sliding along the underside of the shirt as it moved from my right side to my left. Searing pain shot across my waist and I bucked, almost rolling off the gurney as Doc quickly returned to my side.
I'm going to restrain you just until I can give you a local anesthetic.
What? No, don't! Another ripple of sudden agony immobilized me as Doc pulled up the leather restraints and closed them around my wrists, then moved down to my feet and did the same to my ankles. Stop! Don't! Jesus! Fuck!
I'm getting the anesthetic.
Oh, hurry! It hurts.
There you go. Just try to keep still.
What's happening to me?
I might need to operate.
What? As the pain around my midsection began to fade into strained discomfort, Doc pulled over a small table of medical instruments. He pulled a surgical gown off a nearby metal coat rack, then put on a mask and gloves and took hold of a scalpel. I writhed on the gurney, thrashing against the tight restraints as he reached down and pulled up my shirt. Then, I looked down at my bare stomach and froze. A lump of raised flesh was moving underneath my skin, pushing back and forth, as if digging for a patch of skin thin enough to tear through. I could feel it. Even as the anesthetic turned my agony into a dull ache, it was stabbing into my guts with 100 tiny knives, cutting through and pushing aside torn flesh as it plunged up toward my stomach's surface.
Matthew!
What?
Don't look.
He brought the scalpel down and I turned my head, holding my eyes closed tightly as I felt him stab into my stomach. I could feel his fingers slip under the top layer of flesh and pull it aside, then begin to cut through the next layer down as the bulge moved toward it.
Oh my God.
I looked down at my stomach, cut open and bloody. Pushing up through a layer of fatty flesh was a dark blue creature, wriggling as it reared up and out of my guts. It was the size of an eggplant and a somewhat similar shape, covered in torn-up shreds of flesh and sticky blood. A line of centipede-like legs sat on either side of its bulbous body, and the creature's lamprey-like head twisted back and forth as its razor-thin tongue lashed out at Doc's scalpel.
For fuck's sake! Doc! Do something! Get it out of me!
I don't...
The little creature turned its eyeless face toward me, then scuttled up and over my cut-open stomach and onto my chest. With each step, I could feel its spindly legs stabbing into my skin like tiny needles. I tugged at my bound wrists, staring wide-eyed down at the creature's mouth, spreading out like a toothy flower as it scuttled up toward my face. It stopped at my neck and raised the front of its bulbous body, then hovered over my chin as if waiting to be provoked. I stared up at it in petrified silence. I was frozen, unable to move as the panicked adrenaline rushing through my brain stretched the second to an eternity. The creature's mouth flexed and opened even wider, dribbling a stream of yellow ichor down onto my shoulder. I felt the liquid hit my skin, then my flesh sizzled and began to burn, sending darts of searing pain shooting down my arm as I struggled to keep from shaking. The creature pulled its bulging neck back and got ready to pounce. I closed my eyes. The creature threw itself to the side, screaming as it erratically flailed. I opened my eyes just as it twisted itself fully around and saw Doc's scalpel sticking out from the back of its head.
I didn't...
Stab it again!
The thing launched forward, leaping onto Doc's chest and stabbing at him with its two knife-like forelegs. Doc fell backwards to the ground, then grabbed the blue creature with both hands and pried it off of him. He threw it against the nearby wall and scrambled to his feet as the creature rolled its spindly rows of legs underneath itself, then began to scuttle toward him with the speed of a centipede and the anger of a rattlesnake. Doc grabbed his small table of medical tools and swung it downward like a hammer, smashing the creature's midsection and sending yellow ichor splattering across the floor. The little creature writhed and wriggled, twisting each half of its body in an attempt to reconnect them as it helplessly lashed its thin tongue out toward him. Finally, it sagged and went limp, and steam rose up from the yellow liquid pooling out around the halved body.
I...
Thank you, Doc.
I killed it, Matthew.
I know. Thank you.
I can't believe it's real.
What?
I'm... nothing. I just,
Doc, what the hell was that thing?
You're not going to like it.
I don't care. Tell me. Doc poked a steaming shoe at the dead creature, pushing aside gnarled centipede legs as he looked closely at the fleshy, bulbous blue body. He held back a gag, then looked back over at the gurney.
I think it's your stomach.
What? No, that's impossible.
Technically speaking, you've just proven that it isn't.
But how? What the fuck?
It's some disease or some infection. I've been hearing about it for a couple of weeks from surgeons, OR doctors, pharmaceutical chemists. I was told it was contained.
What are you...
I never would have sent you in there if I knew it was contagious.
You mean Chemway?
That's why I sent you in there, to check their security. They're supposed to be developing a cure. I was hoping to go in there myself and see if I could steal some.
Wait, no, you sent me there for pills.
Did you really think that I couldn't get my hands on painkillers? Doctors give those out like candy. I just wanted to see how easy it was for you to get in and get out.
You said they're developing a cure. A cure for what? What's happening to me?
Modular consciousness. Whatever this virus is, it's rewriting cells to produce neurochemical receptors. It replicates the physiological hardware and the chemical software, the combination of which simulates consciousness. And the speed at which this disease progresses, it's terrifying.
I don't understand.
I'm trying to simplify it. I'll put it like this. You're not you. You're a nervous system piloting a complex pile of muscle and bone that thinks it's one individual being. But you're not. None of us are. We're not one thing. We're millions. Tissues, chemicals, liquids, all corralled and united under the brain's leadership, and the only way the brain functions is if it believes it is the most important part of a collective whole. Simply put, your brain believing you are one conscious thing is what makes you one conscious thing. What this virus does is spread that delusion.
What the fuck are you...
The virus rewrote cells in your stomach so that they would produce specialized tissue and chemicals that would simulate brain function. It went from being part of a whole to being a whole in and of itself. It was alive in the same way that you're alive, with its own reactions, drives, and thoughts. It wanted to get out of you because it's not part of you anymore.
Then what the hell is it?
I don't know. A scared animal. It's suddenly conscious, aware of itself, and it wants out. The virus teaches it how to grow legs, a mouth, whatever it needs to be an individual animal and survive on its own. Possibly even reproductive organs.
But I need it.
It doesn't know that.
But you have to put it back in me. I have to.
It's gone, Matthew. It's separate from you now. Even if it was alive, I couldn't.
No, I have to. I can't just.
Hold still. Don't!
The gurney fell and landed on its side, jostling me as the leather straps dug into my wrists and ankles. I could feel the painless tugging from my midsection again, and as I looked down, I realized why. Bits of me were spilling out, sagging out in lumpy piles from over the edges of the peeled back layers of flesh and laying on the cold concrete floor. I could feel the cold, vaguely and distantly, like a breeze from an unseen open window, but more than that, I could feel movement. The pile of organs churned and roiled, wriggling frantically like a kitten in a burlap sack. Then a pointed shape shot up through the surface of fatty tissue and cut through it, splitting the bag of flesh that was only barely holding my organs in. The shape pushed further upward, and suddenly I understood what it was I was looking at. It was a calcified horn, sitting atop a fleshy, bulging head. The reddish shape slid out through the hole it had cut and rolled down to the concrete floor, where it struggled to balance on 4 pointed legs. The thing's surface was covered in porous calcified spikes, like a porcupine with the crawling agility of a spider. The creature, which I guessed must have been one of my kidneys, lowered its horned head and charged forward at Doc, leaving a droplet trail of dark red blood trickling along behind it with each skittering step. The creature leapt onto Doc's foot and stabbed down with its horn, piercing his shoe and digging it into his flesh. Doc screamed and stumbled, then kicked his foot back and forth wildly to try to shake it off.
Don't hurt it, Doc. I need it.
I know, but...
Is it dead?
No, not yet.
As Doc reached for something in his tool bag, I felt another hideous tug inside my gut. I looked down just in time to see a long, eel-like shape emerging from the pile of my organs, lurching out and winding into a twisted sprawl across the floor. At the front of the burnt orange creature that I suspected to be my large intestine, 3 antler-like corkscrew prongs surrounded a squid-like beak, and as it began to slither, black bile dripped down on the front of its eyeless face. With each winding, rhythmic movement, I could feel its tail uncoiling further and further from the tangled mound of organs spilling out of me. I pulled on my wrists in a desperate panic. If I could just get free, grab it and try to pull it back inside. Doc staggered back, his punctured foot slick with blood, and raised a steel bone saw he had clutched tightly in one hand. A few feet in front of him, the half-crushed kidney was rolling back to its feet, and the slithering intestine was closing the distance behind it.
I'm sorry, Matthew, but I can't. I have to destroy them.
You'll kill me. Doc, you're gonna kill me.
I'm sorry.
No!
At the sound of my voice, the creatures froze, then jerked their heads back to look at me. They seemed confused, agitated, like cats suddenly splashed with freezing water.
Doc, they recognize me. They understand me. Not my words, but my feelings. I can feel it.
Keep them distracted. If I can get close enough with the saw, I can cut them to bits before they know it.
Another horrible shape pushed itself out of the pile of organs on the concrete floor, tearing out of a pocket of fatty tissue as it growled. This one was dark purple, almost black, and the front of it fanned out like a spiked-lined Venus flytrap as its stubby forelegs dragged it forward. On its back clung a smaller, brown shape, my gallbladder clinging like a remora to my monstrous liver.
I can feel more coming.
Can you keep it still? Can you control them?
Can you save me?
This isn't the time.
Can you do it? Can you keep me alive?
Not here. Not now. If I got you to a hospital, maybe, but...
I'm already dead.
Yes.
Well, I hate to tell you, but if that's true, then you're the one that killed me.
The creatures on the floor turned to look at Doc, and his face went white. On top of the mound of organs, the purple thing fanned its Venus flytrap mouth open, its spiky teeth flexing out in all directions.
They know what you did, Doc. They all know.
No. No. It was an accident. I never would have sent you in there.
The thing on the mound of organs shrieked, and the gallbladder latched onto its side, suddenly deflated, blasting out a stream of bright yellow bile like water from a burst pipe. It splashed against Doc's chest, and he screamed, then turned on his heel to run and slipped on the blood coming from his injured foot. He fell, his ankle twisting under his leg as he slammed down to the concrete floor. Steam rose up from his burning shirt as he writhed, splashing the acidic bile down onto his stomach and legs. The organs began to move, joined by more from inside me, all of them crawling and slithering and lurching toward his twitching body. In only a second they were on him. They shredded his burning clothes and tore off jagged chunks of bloody flesh, messily gobbling them down as they shrieked and gurgled with bizarre ecstasy. He thrashed and screamed, trying to block his face as they bit off his fingers, but by the time they got all the way through his hands, he had fallen eerily silent. His empty eyes stared blankly across the room at me. His face occasionally jostled as the creatures peeled away more pieces of his exposed flesh. As if they knew somehow, they saved his eyes for last. While they feasted, I looked past Doc's picked-apart corpse at the halved body of the creature that had once been my stomach. It was moving again, stitching itself back together as its lamprey-like mouth slowly opened and closed. It turned toward me, and my blood ran cold. The others perked up, dropped their bits of flesh and guts, and turned to face me, staring without eyes at their desperate, dying incubator.
Please, you've got to help me. I can protect you, keep you hidden, keep you fed. They'll try to kill you if they know, just like he did, but I just want to live. I need you. And whether you know it or not, you still need me. No, please!
I closed my eyes tight as the creeping things approached, terrified that any second would be my last. Then, after a few long moments, I opened them again. The creatures stood silently around me, tilting their heads in animalistic confusion. Then, my stomach scuttled forward on its centipede legs and nestled into the spilled pile of organs, pushing them slowly back into my cut-open midsection with its bulbous head. My snake-like prong-faced intestine was next, winding itself back into place amongst my guts and wrapping folds of fatty tissue around itself as an insulating blanket. My liver and its attached gallbladder followed, scuttling up and over a flap of flayed skin before tugging it closed with its fly-trap mouth. As the others returned to their places, my kidney scurried over and poked at me with its calcified horn, then pressed the sharp point at its end into my skin and began to sew me shut, spitting up plasmatic tendon in vomitous bursts to use as a makeshift thread. It cut my wrist restraints before finishing, then tucked itself into the last open corner of my cut-open gut and wove the last stitch just under my sternum. I could feel them all now, wriggling and pulsing inside me as they attached themselves to each other in their familiar old positions. I stumbled out of Doc's garage into the cold night, pulling my jacket close to hide my blood-soaked body. I didn't know where we were going, but we would know when we got there. A few minutes later and a few blocks away, we passed a homeless man sleeping on a park bench and my stomach growled. There would be a time to feed, but not now, not where anyone could see. We had to be smart, opportunistic predators hidden among our prey like wolves in a crudely stitched together sheepskin. Every part of us was a whole, but we each served a purpose, even me. For the first time, I felt like I belonged to something greater. We were a pack, a family, a colony. We are and will always be a man apart.
Colony was written and directed by Jonathan Inbody. It was edited by Jeffrey Lavin, with music composed and performed by Samantha Hunt. Matt, the narrator, was played by Andy Rich, and Doc was played by Scott W. Hill. Gray Matter is a Word Search Media production. Any similarities to real people, places, or things is purely coincidental. Be kind. Rewind.